have this idea of causing social disturbances in Brixton. It makes me sound like a flasher or something like that, but it's okay. So I was brought here today to talk about how punk made me a black feminist and how it influences my feminism. So it starts with a personal story, and then there's a big performance with the band that I'm in, Big Joni, at the end. So I hope you enjoy it. This is a picture of me when I was 15 years old. So I'm from London, but I grew up in a small town in the Midlands called Kettering. So growing up in a working class small town, my Black British experience is one of Shane Meadows, This Is England, or a Ken Loach film. It's not very different from Top Boy or anything like that. And I was the only black girl in my school with 1,000 kids. And, you know, there was that experience of being an outsider there. And we went on a French exchange to France, and all the kids there were listening to Nirvana at the time. And I was like, oh, wow, what's this? I've never heard this before. It wasn't in my stratosphere, that kind of music. And it was MTV Unplugged. And when I got home, the first thing I did was switch on to MTV2, which was a new channel at the time, and watch the whole program. It used to be on repeat. It used to loop around, and I used to record it in VHS like we used to do back then. And something drew me to the music. It was something about the anger and the angst, especially being a teenager in a small town, not feeling a part of anything. And so it was from that point that I started to take on some of, I guess you can call them like the ideals of that music, learning how to look after myself, learning how to go outside the parameters of the school system to educate myself. And so I started skipping school and going to the library and reading about art and politics and feminism, and music was my entry point into all of that. When I was growing up, I only thought there were 2 universities in the whole of England, because there were Oxford and Cambridge, because they were the ones in the boat race. So the background that I came from, these ideas of social mobility just weren't really around, and music was my entry point into that. So I moved into the punk scene. I come to London when I was 19. I start going to gigs, and what do I find? Lots of angry white people shouting down the microphone. Sometimes the occasional woman would be there, like Kathleen Hanna you see on the ends, Jello Biafra at the front, and Henry Rollins from Black Flag. But it was a lot of angry white people shouting. And even though I loved the energy of that music, I loved getting in the circle pit, I loved sort of jumping up walls, making friends, all that solidarity around punk's unity and everything like that. But I still had to deal with microaggressions in the scene that effectively said we were all equal. Some examples of that. When I went to get my first piercing, which was a labret piercing, the piercer said to me my lips were too big to have it done properly, so they did it lower than it was supposed to be. Other things, such as when I got my nose pierced, I was told that my nose was too wide to have it pierced in the correct place, and so they did it in the wrong place, even though there's a long history of piercings across the African diaspora. And when I wanted a mohawk haircut, this is slightly embarrassing. So those of black women who know, we relax our hair sometimes. Sometimes we hot comb. So you spend hours in front of a stove, hot combing your hair, burning up your head. And then someone goes to you, you're like, oh, how do I get my hair to stick up in these Liberty spikes? I don't know what to do. What do I do? Oh, why don't you try sugar and water? The last thing you want after sitting in front of a stove for 4 hours straightening your hair is water to go anywhere near your head, because then it will frizz up. So just little things like that where I didn't fit into the aesthetic of what it was to be a girl into punk music. I wasn't pale. I certainly wasn't skinny. So what I was constantly looking for images that looked like me, and I couldn't find them. Then I discovered these people. Polystyrene from X-Ray Specs, Brixton-based bands, HR, Bad Brains, all black punk bands who changed the course of punk music, led us into hardcore punk, and were also a big influence on bands like Minor Threat and all the subsequent hardcore bands coming from that scene. And DH from Dead Kennedys, who I think sometimes drums for Red Hot Chili Peppers now, 30 years later. Alice Bag from the Bags. There were so many bands that I found where there was a black presence in punk music that no one really talked about. I was like, wow, now I feel connected. Now I know that I can be in this space and participate. But I still held myself back. And why was that? Growing up as a young black working class girl, I was constantly told by my mother and those around me that I had to be 3 times better than everybody else. I couldn't fail. And having those barriers made me feel like, well, if I feel like I'm not going to be number 1 straight away, then I'm just not going to try. I'm going to step back. I didn't have the space to fail. I didn't have the space to practice and become better. And it was through punk, really, that gave me that safe space to feel comfortable to fail. It was okay not to sing. I can't sing. That's why I don't have a microphone tonight, besides this one. And also, I couldn't really play an instrument either. But all of those things were okay, because it's not about how good you are as a musician. It's about you participating. By using the resources that you have, that is a political act in itself. And so, carried on moving around in black feminist circles, and I met Stephanie Phillips, who's the lead singer in Big Joni. And I added her on Facebook because she had a guitar, and I was like, oh wow, there's a black girl with a guitar and she's a band, she's so cool, I'm going to add her on Facebook. And one day she put up a post saying that she wanted to start an all-black girls punk band. And so I replied straight away, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm 29, 28 at the time. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go for it. So I messaged her back and I said, I want to do this, and that. I had it all set out in my mind. I wanted to play drums in the same way as the Jesus and Mary Chain, who are one of my favourite bands. I wanted to sound like this. I wanted to do that. And I thought, right, okay, I'm going to do it. I was so scared when we had our first practice, but there was something really, I think the first song that we played was the Stooges, I Want to Be Your Dog, because it's a really simple drum beat. And I remember screaming out the words, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. Why didn't I start this before? I felt so liberated in that space, and I really valued doing that with another black woman and finding that space to be expressive. And then we met Kira, who came down, who played bass for us, and so we started Big Joni. This is a picture of our first gig. It was at a festival called First Timers, which was run by Brian Benyon to start a new, a movement, encourage women to start bands. And as you can see there, my concentration is really hard because I just didn't really want to look up and see the people. I think there was about 200 people there at the time. And we played a 15-minute set, and then straight away people came up to us and like, oh wow, you guys were great, we want you to play at this gig, we want you to do that. And so we just kept moving and growing and recording. And again, it was all about us having the space to not be good, for us to fail as black women, to be able to just go, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try it anyway. Here I am setting up what was the drum kit that I could afford at the time, which is an upside-down plastic tub and a cymbal stand with a paintbrush in a vase. And we recorded our first lounge sessions on an iPhone and put it out online. And in the next stage, we released a tape called Sister Punk EP, which sold out and was spread all over the internet, and lots of people put us on their mixtapes on Tumblr and all sorts of stuff. So my confidence started to grow in that, going from being the only black girl in punk shows to now being in a band, a black feminist punk band in that, and then starting to put music out. And this really started to build my confidence in myself and in my activism. And black feminism, for me, is totally informed by my DIY punk ethics. It's all about doing it yourself. It's all about using the resources that you have to challenge white supremacy, white patriarchy. So, moving on, band's going, everything's going wonderful. I start going into setting up events, making safe spaces for other black women like myself. And earlier this year in March, we put on the Black British Feminism Past, Present, Futures Conference in Brixton. It was in the collaboration with the Body Narratives, and it sought to connect two generations of black feminists. So we had women who were around in the 70s, who were friends with Olive Morris and were part of the organisation of women of African and Asian descent, come down, tell their stories, share those stories to a younger generation of women. That picture there is actually from a talk and a walk by Kelly Foster around Brixton about black women's activism in that area. And for the whole day, there was probably about 150 women of colour that participated. As said earlier, I was also a founding member of Reclaim Brixton, which again was run by 4 women, 2 women of working class, black women. And that whole event, the whole way we approached that was from a DIY ethos. 2 of us are musicians. Cindy's a DJ, actually. So it was all about just putting up a celebration of Brixton in that space. And that's why it turned into essentially like a kind of a big rave out in Brixton. So what punk did for me and how it led me to become a black feminist was really about trying to find an energy that would put me in a vertical, in a crooked room. And I say a crooked room because Stephanie, the lead singer in our band, wrote a song called Crooked Room based on this quote by Melissa Harris Parry. And when she says, when they confront race and gender stereotypes, black women are standing in a crooked room and they have to figure out which way is up. And it's really important for me, this quote, I think, and what it encompasses in our band, and me standing here today, because there were no images of black alternative girls when I was growing up. There was a very particular image of what it meant to be a black British woman. And I really hope that after this, there were lots of 14-year-old black girls who were sitting in front of MTV2 watching Nirvana, knowing that there's a space for them to go to, knowing that they are as part of that scene or as part of any culture as anyone else is. So we're going to perform the song Crooked Room for you. So I'd like to invite the rest of the band to the stage. If you give them a round of applause, please.
Can't think straight, chorus of noise. Red line goes where, can't think straight, locked in your room. South Shell, redhead. Domatics, where will I go? See it, can reach it, Domatic. Where will I go? See it, can reach it, yeah. The crooked room gets you. The crooked room gets you, yeah. The crooked room